This is lesson 8. This is where it all comes together for the back end. You have learned to create a feature with Claude Code, a coding assistant, in lesson 5. Lesson 6 demonstrated the guardrails of pytest, rough, and MyPy to catch and fix errors. Lesson 7 gave some insight into logging by showing what happens at runtime. Now we will build a complete new feature from scratch using all 4 guardrails and a single PIV loop. One prompt, one feature, all guardrails. Real results. By the end of this lesson, you will be able to, number 1, build a complete feature from a single Claude Code prompt. Number 2, run all guardrails as part of the workflow. Number 3, watch the self-correction loop. Claude Code fixes its own issues. Number 4, see runtime logs confirming that the feature works. And number 5, understand the full PIV pattern for AI system development. As I noted before, we're going to create a full feature today. And I've talked about this before, that these coding assistants really love examples. So I asked it first to look at an example of what we want to create. And then we create a note feature in this directory. Then I give it some other information that characterize that note. So then we're going to register the router in main.py, create and run the migration, run pytest, run rough, run MyPy, start the server so we can look at the logs, test with curl, create a node, list the node, show the logs, and then query the database to show that the node exists in the database. So those are the things that we're going to do today, and to illustrate and to show our guardrails in action. They were now in VS Code, and all we're going to do is just paste our prompt, and we can see our prompt here. It's the same thing we had on our previous slide. And we're just going to run it, and hopefully everything will work out. We'll see how it goes. So we're starting, and it's going through its thing. We should probably see directory being created over here at some point. Okay, it's going through, it's looking at the previous example here, example that we gave it. Like I was telling you before, these coding assistants like Claude Code really like to use examples. So I always use plenty of examples so that in patterns, so it can see, you can give it some indication of what you want. So it's going through. It's created a directory, features. And you can see notes. The tests are already there. See here. And it's writing all the files here. So it's continuing working. I have it in the mode where it doesn't ask me about creating files, as I indicated before. Hopefully this doesn't take too long. So it's creating the note feature structure now. Again, I'm not doing anything. I gave it the prompt. Should have all the direction that it needs to create this note feature. Do all the tests to make sure everything is created correctly. And this is what I was talking about as far as the PIV loop, that we can set these things up where we can create one PIV loop and then another and another. Or we can do, in some cases, we can do them in parallel. It depends on the dependency of one over the other, next to the other. Sometimes we need to run them in sequence because you need the results from the previous one to go into the next one. But sometimes the PIV loops are independent of each other, and we can just run those in parallel. We'll see how to do some of that later. So we're continuing, we registered our routing in main.py, we had to do that. So you can just see it's moving along. You know, the Claude Code Anthropic has an article on their blog about harnessing Claude Code where you can run these things for hours and hours, even 24 hours, 48 hours, if you have it set up correctly. If you can have it set up where one PIV loop goes into another PIV loop, or you can, like I said before, run some in parallel. You can continually work through these things, go through the modules, go through the PIV loop one after the other, make sure each one is working before it goes to the next. And then there's no real limit except on tokens where you can, there's no limit to what these things can do as far as the time is concerned, except for the number of tokens that you have. If you want to purchase more and more tokens, you can continually run these things. Okay, I've run this thing before, so it's run into a little problem here because I have something running. I guess it's still running the database. I didn't ask it to kill the database, so hopefully it will get through this. Okay, the database is a mismatch. It's going to fix that. So this is really good in a way. You can see that there are some problems, and then it's going through and fixing those problems. I cause these problems myself because I think I set up the database on the last run. I was just running this thing to test to make sure that it works correctly. So that's why you're seeing a big error, but it seems to have gotten through that. Hopefully. So it's going through its thing and testing different ways of doing things, I guess. Okay, the migration was created, so I think we got through the problem that we had. So let me clean up the migration to only add the notes table. So you can see from that example, it was going to create the database. It already had one, so it had a little messy situation there. So it had to resolve that situation, and it was able to do so. So now it's running pytest on notes test. Make sure that it's running correctly. It's going through one of the tests that we asked it to run. Hopefully that will work out okay. Has a little problem here. This is good in a way that you can see that it's not just going through and everything is working from point A to point B. You do have some little hiccups here and there, and then Claude Code comes in and fixes it, and then runs the test again and see if everything is validated. So it just keeps going. See if there's a problem, fixes those problems, then keep moving on to the next thing. Now it's running rough. You can see here. You can see here that the features, notes, and everything is in there as we would expect. Okay, starting the server. So all these things are done automatically. I just give it a prompt and I give it some guardrails to work within, and it just keeps going and going. So you can see, hopefully in your mind's eye, you can see how these things can go 24 hours, 48 hours, or any length of time if you have it set up correctly, if you have these things, some guardrails in place. And you can put more guardrails on top of what we have here as you start to build a specific application and you start to have requirements for that specific application. Then you can also add some guardrails in around that particular application. This is more generic, where we can put almost any application that's using these technologies, that's using Python, TypeScript, and those technologies, we can put those on top of this foundation, and it should run very easily, very quickly, and be able to use the guardrails in those applications. But we'll see later when we actually start building larger applications. Okay, it's finished. So we go through, we can see that everything was created. The logs show complete login lifecycle. We query the database, it's querying the database. So you have everything checked out. I like it when it shows the little green thumbs up, but check marks, I guess you used to say. But here, it doesn't show it in that way. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. But if you can see, 24 tests passed, all checks, no issues, listed 12 notes. I don't guess we have the little. Many times we have each test, and you'll see a little check, a green check mark beside it. I kind of like to see those. But you can see the endpoints here. Well, let's look at the logs. And have some information about the logs here, but see if we can get it to give us more information. I had some information up here about the logs. The log shows it's telling you that it was created, when it was created, when it was completed, when it was started, when it's completed. So you can see here some of the logs that we saw in the last lesson. Some of the same kinds of things where you have key value pairs, you have a request ID, and so on and so on. So you can see everything is working great. So this is how it all works. We go through the PIV loop and we validate everything, and then we have that feature, and it's hopefully rock solid. as I like to say. And then we go to the next one. And we go to the next one and keep on until we complete our complete application. So that's it for this lesson. And we're going to do just a small review. This is our lesson recap. One prompt, one feature created. We're using the vertical slice architecture, putting all of the associated files in one directory. In this way, correcting errors or modifying the feature is extremely easy. We saw all 4 guardrails in place and how they detect errors and present them to your coding assistant to correct them. We have presented functional proof of a working system by querying the database for information we had entered into it. The PIV loop, plan, we describe what we want. Implement, your coding assistant, in our case Claude Code, builds it. And validate, guardrails catch problems and your coding assistant fixes them. The pattern works for any feature, task, notes, comments, tags, anything. Later we will see how connecting these PIV loops together, or even conducting some in parallel, goes towards our goal of automating our development and implementation processes with minimum human intervention. However, the applications that are developed and implemented are still rock solid and ready for production. Okay, that's all we have for today. In our next lesson, we start to examine the front end of our full stack application. If you want to support us, subscribe to our channel and hit that like button. If you want to know when our next lesson hits, ring that notification bell. Thanks for viewing and your support.